Fortnite Chapter 6's story is starting to develop into something incredible. With characters like Hope and Daigo just being really fleshed out in recent seasons, it seems like the lore that was once focused around exploding purple cubes and bananas on bench press is now turning into something a whole lot deeper, and Daigo is going to be the one who spearheads this change of tone. Look, it's pretty obvious that since the start of Fortnite Chapter 5, Battle Royale as a whole has been going for a lot more of a realistic feel. Even the story of the society kidnapping Peely and using him for ransom put our usually joyful characters in a pretty serious situation. But what's so special about Daigo's story that makes me think we're really going to delve into these darker plot points through his character? Well, Daigo's whole story so far has followed him down a path of greed and lust for power. Despite the fact that all he wanted to do at first was save his sister from the spirit realm, after doing so, Daigo soon became fully determined to confront the Dark Presence, which is exactly what it wanted him to do. It's interesting to note as well that when Daigo defeats Shogun X, we see the nearby spirit portal release all of this golden kintsugi, which we know is the same material he eventually uses to repair the ruinous mask of power, almost like the Dark Presence perfectly set up for him to do that. Now, using this ruinous mask of power, Daigo makes his way over to another spirit portal and performs a ritual allowing him to enter it. This is where ultimately he breaks his way through to the spirit realm, and if you haven't already seen the cutscene, this is also the moment where Daigo is corrupted and taken over by the Dark Presence. He completely fell straight into its trap, and all because he got a taste of power when defeating Shogun X and decided he wanted more of that. This isn't even the first time we've seen this sort of thing in Fortnite either. All the way back in Chapter 1 Season 5, when the cube first arrived to the island, there was a loading screen description where Bright Bomber said this to us: "Despite all of the creepy noises and glowing glyphs, we couldn't resist taking a closer look." And look, it's simple, but that's exactly the same thing that happened to Daigo. Even though he knew it was dangerous, he knew he was making his way into the spirit realm and he would likely get corrupted, his hunger to defeat the Dark Presence and his desire to prove himself was overpowering his logic. It also ironically has likely completely destroyed his relationship with his siblings, even though his original plan was to rescue his sister. I mean, that's the whole reason he was doing it. And we've seen this pattern in Fortnite before as well, with the story of Midas. Midas was a wealthy criminal who became way too greedy, he took more than he deserved, he was cursed with the Golden Touch, and it ruined his relationship with his daughter, seeing he almost killed her with that very same curse. Just last season there was dialogue in-game showing that Midas is still quite a distant father. He said he was meant to write, and his greed and the curse it bestowed upon him ruined his loving relationship, and if the same happens to Daigo, that is where things could get really interesting and pretty dark. Now, if you're excited to find out why, drop a like on the video and subscribe if you're enjoying it so far. Now, as I mentioned before, Daigo has followed a similar path of corruption to characters such as Dark Bomber and Midas, in the sense that 1, they got a taste of power and they chased it, and 2, it destroyed their relationships. Think Drift and Bright Bomber are back together now, but that's not the point. There's also another common feature in power-hungry characters that ties into Daigo in a really interesting way. When someone gets corrupted, they're always completely covered in the thing that led to their downfall. Midas was gold, Bites, who we haven't talked about yet, was chrome, and Daigo has the masks all over him, which also likely means he can give masks to people and turn them into a target of the Dark Presence, like we saw with Drift. But let's go back to Bites, because we really haven't talked about him much yet. In fact, his story is really interesting, because the Nothing quite literally told him,
"To continue past this point is to lose everything you knew and everything you were."
He knew it was going to be bad for him, but the idea of achieving immense power on the other side is something that we saw with Raz too. Midas, Raz, Bites, Daigo, all of them. They were brainwashed into believing that giving up their personal relationships and really their entire lives was worth it for the power they were going to receive. But if Daigo is now fully intertwined with the Dark Presence and has lost himself completely, who's going to be powerful enough to stop him? Well, I think the answer to that question is actually really interesting. Now, if you've been paying attention to the NPC dialogue, which admittedly I haven't either, I actually had to check this one on Twitter, but Kendo's NPC has an interaction where he talks about his grand purpose. He specifically says, "If I had a true master, perhaps I could be the island's protector." Now, a lot of people seem to think that Kendo will be the one to protect the island against Daigo, and he'll actually end up fighting his brother, likely in a cinematic or a mini event. That part I totally agree with, and it would be really cool to see. But a lot of people also think that the Night Rose will be the one to train Kendo. And look, while I understand why they think this, and it does make sense, there's definitely a better and much more interesting route route Fortnite could take with it, in my opinion. Night Rose does have dialogue telling us that now that she's been freed from the puppeteer, she believes that perhaps she could train a new generation of warriors someday. I honestly think that this is talking about the team of superheroes in next season's storyline, not Kendo, because in my opinion, Jones would make a whole lot more sense for training Kendo. And it's not just because I like the idea, like honestly, just let me explain. It's become pretty obvious to me and to a lot of others as well that Hope and Kendo are starting to get very close. So close in fact that Kendo gave us a whole speech about how he just feels so comfortable around her and experiences a different type of love than he does with his family. Like, okay, yeah, bro, we get it. Now Jones, as Hope's almost father figure in a way, obviously isn't too fond of the idea of Hope and Kendo. In one of the Eevee loading screens for this season, we can actually see that in the background, Jones has made Kendo sit at a whole different table to him and Hope, which is a bit cooked, but it's funny, so anyways. And given the fact that Jones is probably the oldest person on the island, maybe given the exception of the Dark Presence itself, he's saved reality multiple times and he knows 342,000 different languages. I don't know why that's relevant, but he's a very smart guy, he's strong, he's resilient, and I think him training Kendo will be the perfect way to not only bond Jones with his future son-in-law, but also to fulfill Kendo's calling for purpose and to prepare him to protect the island in his fight against his brother. Currently, this is the coolest way I see the storyline playing out. It'd really fit the whole theme of the lore becoming a lot more mature, and with the recent decisions in regards to the storyline, I think things playing out like this isn't all that unlikely. Let me know what you think of this in the comments. Thanks for watching, have a good one, and Kendo and Hope for life.